Hey, what's up, everybody? James Walker here. Vanessa could not join me. She will be joining us late, hopefully. She has some issues with her car, so hopefully she can join us later. If not, I'll try and survive without her, and we'll try and do a good job for you guys out there. So today, got a special guest, good friend of mine, Jamie Tilke. We met about 6 years ago in real estate school, um, and we did I think we had a class like 20 or 25. And then me, Jamie, Heather, Melissa Medina were the only four, I think, out of our class that are still doing real estate here locally, as far as I know. And we all still keep in touch, of course, with each other. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Jamie. How's it going, Jamie?
What's up, James? How you doing, man?
Good. How you doing?
Great. I'm here with you, man.
So, Jamie, give us your little origin story. Who are you? How'd you end up in Fayetteville? All that good stuff.
Yeah, here we go. Grew up in a small town in upstate New York. Pretty humble beginnings. You're missing a 9 in my number. But anyway, grew up fair amount of poverty and just kind of didn't want to be a victim of my circumstances and figured I was going to do something about it. So that led to me wanting to be a rock star, which made me move down to Florida. That didn't work out. So I became an over-the-road truck driver. And then after watching Rambo, I decided to join the U.S. Army and said, I'm going to be a Ranger, even though I didn't know what that meant until they told me at the recruiter station. So yeah, I did that, stayed in for 24 years, ended up spending the vast majority of it in Special Forces Green Beret. And then ultimately decided that I had enough of that after 24 years and wanted to build generational wealth for the family. Told my wife we were going to be real estate millionaires, and we had like $5 in the bank and just a little bit of credit card debt, somewhere around $127,000, and decided to get started after that. So that's around the time that I met you. Actually, I had met you before we actually finally pulled the trigger because I was still active duty when I met you.
Yeah.
And then got in, did a couple flips, and then ultimately came up with the concept of building a small boutique hotel specifically for traveling military people. And got the first 12 units, and then from there bought additional more until we ended up with, a fairly nice sized portfolio. And then, that's where we're kind of at today. We have an office building. We have about 33 or 34 doors, and we have most of them predominantly run through the boutique model, the small boutique hotel model that you know about, and that I'm sure we'll dig into here some. So that's kind of how we ended up here in Fayetteville.
Yeah. So you retired here, correct?
Yeah.
So, have you always been interested in investing in real estate? I know you, of course, in the military, 24 years, and thanks for your service. But have you always been, towards the end, or maybe always thinking about it over your lifetime, or?
Not until probably 2007.
Yeah.
So
right when the market was about to crash.
Yeah. And that's exactly when I started. Yeah. So perfect timing. A lot of sarcasm there. No, look, many people talk about this thing that they refer to as the purple book. So a lot of people understand what I'm talking about. For other people that don't, it's a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which has a purple cover. And like many other people, that was a life-changing moment as far as comprehending and understanding how money works, right? And I kind of alluded to it very briefly in the beginning, but I grew up super poor, moved multiple times, sometimes didn't have a place to stay or food to eat, et cetera, et cetera. So when I did finally make money and get a hold of money, I wasn't sitting there thinking about how do I make my money work. I was just like, I got money so I can buy more shit. Let's buy more shit. And I just kept buying more shit, right? And it just, I kept making more money, which allowed me to buy more shit, but didn't really help me fix the problem. But after reading that book, I was like, wow. So in summary, in 5 seconds or less, if your money's making your money, you're winning. If it's not, you're doing it all wrong. And so I understood that at that time. So then I got super pumped and inspired, moved up to Fort Lewis, Washington at the time. and I went and talked to a real estate agent, had never bought a house in my life.
I think you're freezing up, Jamie. Damn it. Not sure if it's your end or my end.
Still got you.
Oh, okay. Your voice came back. Okay,
Yeah.
there you are.
Yeah. I don't know why sometimes it glitches like that for a couple of seconds, but most of the time it's fine. So apologies. But anyway, just to recap. So at that time, after reading that, I had got inspired. I moved up to Fort Lewis, Washington, talked to a real estate agent, and she's like, yeah, just show us your LES and you can buy a house. And I'm like, serious? She's like, yeah, you don't need anything else. So LES for non-military people is leave and earning statements. So I gave them my LES. We went and looked for a house, and I bought the house, and I was like, holy crap. And this is 2007, and I think it was like a $240,000 house. So at that time, that was a super big deal for me. I was like,
yeah, that's probably a big house. Yeah, a 240. Yeah.
Well, so it was a brick house, and it had a half renovated basement. So I started to fully renovate it. The intentions was I was going to rent out. I was going to house hack, and I know we're going to probably talk about that later. I was going to rent out part of the downstairs to offset some costs. So I was like, cool. But anyway, I bought that. And then, after talking to the loan officer, again, I was overzealous and I wasn't thinking clearly. He's like, dude, we could totally get you another house. I'm like, what? Are you serious? And he's like, yeah. He's like, just show me your leave and earnings statement again. And I was like, oh, okay. So I gave him my leave and earnings statement, and we bought another house. Here's the problem, right? Again, overzealous and blinded by the excitement and thought of what could be, but not really fully understanding what I was doing. No mentorship or nothing other than reading some books, right? So I bought the house. He's like, look, things are going weird in the market right now. Unfortunately, we're going to have to finance this at like 11%. But he's like, don't worry about it. He's like, it's for like 60 and I'll refi you out this. Not a problem. Well, surprise, what happened in 2008?
Yeah.
There was no refi.
Yeah.
So I was in at 11%. Then on top of that, which this house needed a lot of renovations. On top of that, it was a big value add project. I had come down to go to Iraq as well. Plus I was a single parent and I had my kids. So long story short, I went to Iraq, the bubble popped. I couldn't pay any. I mean, I was so over leveraged. It was ridiculous, and ended up losing everything. So kind of connecting your question, right? Your question was, did I always think about real estate? No, other than playing the shit out of Monopoly when I was a kid. Like, I have the board memorized. You can ask me, like, any of the spaces, I got them. Anyway, point is I played that, wanted it, understood, read the book, bought the houses, lost everything. And at that point I was like, screw it, I'm out. And then I just went back to the same old typical thing, which was living above and beyond my means and figuring out how to pay for shit later. And it wasn't until I kind of started digging in deep around 2016, I was listening to a ton of Bigger Pockets, and then I was also just reading a bunch more books and making myself smart on it and watching a ton of HGTV. People laugh about it, but I'm like, it was still inspiring to me because you're watching these flipping shows and you're like, I can do that, and not only can I do that, but like, I want to do that. It wasn't just about the money. It was like, I didn't realize at that time that I have this big creative piece of me that I love the thought of taking something that's garbage and turning it into something cool. Right. So anyway, that's when I came back here and got my real estate license, as 2018 with you. And then, it was right at like the end of 2020 after I had done a couple small things. That's when I said, we're all in. And then I retired.
Gotcha. So do you think investing in Fayetteville is a good idea? I mean, do you enjoy investing here? I know there's probably other places that you're saying, we can kind of make this real broad, or, very open, but do you think Fayetteville is a good place to invest?
Well, I think it's a phenomenal place.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is I used to tell people the reason why I did. And the reality is that while I still believe I was correct, there was additional things happening that I didn't really fully understand to bring us to kind of where we are today. Because I think you probably talk about it routinely on your channel. I've seen you talk about it and watch some of your shows before. Excuse me. but there's a lot of stuff happening in Fayetteville right now. And I think it was 2022. It was like number 2 in the entire country for like multifamily investing. I was like, this is ridiculous. But here was Jamie's simpleton theory and thought process on why I chose Fayetteville, because most of the people in special forces always talk about, you're never going to find me in Fayetteville, right? I'm not going back there, Vietnam, all the other names people call this place. And at that time, when I convinced M that we were going to come here to become real estate investors, she's like, why there? And I said, listen, here's my argument. There is arguably no other place more stable than next to the United States military's largest installation. If there's one thing that I know from what happened in 2008, even though I wasn't really a full-time savvy investor, is this: when everything goes sideways, the military's still going to get their paychecks, and they're still going to get their BAH. And if they don't, we're probably all in bunkers eating MREs, so it doesn't matter anyway, right? My point is you're not going to see the appreciation, and you're not going to see the massive numbers that you see in a city like LA or Chicago or Miami, but it's incredibly stable. And even during 2008, when everything else went sideways, did they feel it here? Yeah, of course. But was it anything like Nevada or Cal? Not even close. Not even remotely. Because again, they're still going to get their paycheck, and they're still going to make their payments, because if they don't, they work for the United States government, and there's consequences for your actions, right? Yeah. And everybody knows that. So bottom line was, why did you come Fayetteville? Incredibly stable market. What I didn't understand at that time, because I didn't do enough research, but now I understand to be true, is that, you know, from the first time I ever showed up here in Fort Bragg in 2003 until today, I would say just in the past, tell me if you agree, past 3 to 5 years, there's been massive buildup here as far as people investing actual real money, you know. And for people that don't understand what it's like to live in and around a military town, this is what I tell people: look, it's a very transient place. So if you know that the average person is going to leave every 3 years, like what's the long-term investment strategy? And so for a lot of people, it's all about national brand. It's all about convenience, right? I'm going to throw up another Taco Bell, a Chick-fil-A. I'm going to put in a Walmart, or I'm going to put in, you know, a Target and a Best Buy and stuff like all these things. And a lot of my military friends, and definitely myself as well, is just like, man, why isn't there more things that you can do, you know, where you could maybe spend a little bit more money? Again, we could talk about that as well, but I'll just kind of close it out by saying Fayetteville, in my opinion, was an incredibly stable market. And I was fortunately to time the market properly for not only what happened across the entire country in 2021 and 22 with the appreciation, but on top of that, causing people, with everything that's happening in the geopolitical thing too, on a lot of people coming south. And of people coming south, one of the top states is North Carolina, right? Followed by probably, you know, Florida and Texas, and maybe Tennessee beats North Carolina, but definitely we've had a massive migration into North Carolina. And so because that, people are putting real money here.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you. You know, and you know, I was a police officer, never thought about it either. Towards the end, like when we were at real estate school, obviously when we met, I was more thinking about it. My mom's always been, as you know, my mom's always been a landlord. She's been doing landlord stuff for over 30 years here in Fayetteville. And when, you know, 2020 happened, like you said, I can't remember the 2008 market with her. I'm pretty sure it was bad too, but you know, she was still getting paid even in 2008, 2000. I don't remember anything her saying, "Oh God, you know, this is horrible." I'm sure it wasn't good, but obviously, you know, her being a landlord and doing the passive income was her 2020. You know, people were, you know, couldn't pay their mortgage, and then the renters didn't have to pay anything because of the pandemic, which I understood. But she was good. It didn't hurt her at all. So yeah, definitely, you know, being in a military base, it definitely has its pros. You know, like you said, biggest one on the East Coast, if not the world. So definitely, I totally understand that by, you know, what you mean by that.
Yeah, Bragg is the biggest U.S. military's largest installation in the world. Period.
Yeah.
It is, and like I said, you're not going to see the appreciation that you see in other places. Like it really, my buddy Jason would talk about his loans over in California, and I'd be like, "What do you mean you refinance every 3 to 5 years?" And he's like,
What?
"Dude, he's like, people don't buy over here based on, you know, um, paying it off over. They buy based on appreciation." And so, anyway, it's a different game over there. I'm not
Yeah.
super in there, but it took me a while to kind of understand the difference. But it goes back to my point I'm trying to make about here specifically, and that is it's a very, very stable market. Very stable.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know we were talking about a little bit before you came on the air. We're talking about landlord friendly states, and just to kind of give you a countdown, number one is North Carolina. For landlord friendly states. And I know you don't deal with it too much as we were talking about off air. You have dealt with it a little bit, but for example, my mom's a landlord, so she's almost 80, so I had to help her with some stuff going on with her, some of her houses, and unfortunately, I had to evict 2 people out in the past month. And I never lived in any other state where I had to deal with this, but it was relatively easy. I mean, you had to go to the courthouse, small claims court, file a injunction, go to front of the judge or a magistrate, really not a judge, and they hear both sides. And if they agree with the landlord or whoever they agree with, or they're saying that something's wrong, then they have 10 days to do a writ of possession. And I do that, twice, like I said, in the past month. So definitely, compared to I've heard other people talk about other states, and I'm like, wow, nothing like that here. Definitely more, more friendly. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely so from all the war stories and horror stories I've heard from other people. But just let me ask you a question. How long did that take you, that process?
They go down to the courthouse. I mean, you can do it online now, which is great, because I used to go down there, had to do make 4 copies of the ejection, and I had to ask if they were in the military and all that stuff. So online, it took 10 minutes for me, printed them all out, went down to the courthouse, paid $93 at the register at the clerk of courts, and then went next door to the sheriff's office, paid him $30 to serve the paperwork. So altogether, I mean, an hour or two. I mean, with getting on the computer and going down there, driving, all that stuff. So,
Yeah, but then how long do you have to wait? That's my question.
Usually about a week. Yeah, usually about a week. So if I went on a Monday, usually the following Monday or Tuesday is when we have court. So I haven't seen anything past 10 days, but usually we'll say 5 to 7 business days. So.
All right, let's go 7 days. Okay. And then after that 7 days, how long before they typically are forced to leave?
10 days. If they lose, they have 10 days to get everything out. And if they're not out, you do a writ of possession. And that's when you show up with the sheriff's office, and they will force them out. And then anything inside the house, you got to keep anything in their house. If they can't get it out, you can't just throw it off to the side of the road. You've got to keep it secure for about 30 days. Even if they're like, in those cases, hey, they don't want it, but I never encountered that yet. So, and I never encountered any. I think the farthest I've gone, I've shown up at a house with the sheriff's office. The people were still there. By the time the sheriff's office showed up, they were out in 5 minutes. They didn't fight it. They didn't, say, hey, I'm not getting out and get arrested. They just got their stuff and left. So fortunately, there's a bunch of crap in the house, but we got rid of it. So, 10 days after you win your court case.
So it sounds to me like all in total, you're probably looking at somewhere between 20 to 30 days, depending on kind of any things that happen that are beyond your control in between there.
Yeah.
Well, so I think, the short answer is clearly, as you're demonstrating there online, but also through your conversation and experiences, that North Carolina is a very user-friendly state for landlords. But I know a lot of people that really struggle with it. And so typically, particularly when time is so critical in a lot of these situations, where you're trying to flip units and people aren't trying to pay, they're not paying, or they haven't paid for quite some time. So what we typically do is called cash for keys, right? And it's like, okay, here's $700 if you leave within the next, give them the time, right? Hey, if you leave in the next 72 hours, I'll give you $700 to walk out, right? Because a lot of these people, they get dragged out and they're not paying you the rent. So you're not only losing the rent, but the reality is, having grown up in poverty, is they're probably never going to pay you anyways because they don't have the money. So how are they going to, and then you're investing all this time in this stuff. And luckily, like you saying, some of it's online, but it's like, what's your time valued at?
Yeah.
And anyway, I have never found myself in a situation where somebody didn't want that. They typically take the money.
I never thought about that. Yeah, that's not a bad idea either. I've heard people say it, but I never tried that. What I'm always afraid of is, well, I guess you have to get everything wrote up. But
yeah, you bring a piece
yeah.
of paper. This is how we've done it. We bring a piece of paper, a legal document, saying that the attorney would type up and stuff. And it basically says, look, I'm in exchange for X number of dollars, I'm asking you to leave within this amount of time frame. And a lot of times the conversation happens beforehand. Like with the last one where there was 3 people that this happened to simultaneously, it was like, listen, I'm going to come back on Monday. So like Friday or whatever. I'm going to come back on Monday. And if you'll leave when I come back with the paper, then I'll give you this much money cash. We'll shake hands. Everything's all good. But I just need to move forward. And I understand you're in duress. And so I'm not trying to make it more difficult for you. I'm trying to, in some way, shape, or form, help you out. But I'm also trying to save some time. And nobody needs to go through the legal paperwork as well. So if you're good with that, then let's do it. And so show up. And again, I'm thinking probably between 5 to 7 times over the past 5 years. And no one's never said no and didn't take it.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I didn't think about that. Yeah, because like you said, time is money. I mean, if we were to if you put up a price, an hourly wage on what you do, over a year, I mean, guy, you come to $100, $150 an hour possibly. And that's not even thinking about. I don't know how you are, but I think we have the same work ethic. Just because it's Saturday, Sunday, or 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, typically we could be working still, not like continuously, but a client calls me at 7:30 or texts me and, hey, I want to see a house tomorrow. I'm jumping on the computer probably. Ain't no probably about. I'm jumping on the computer. So yeah, that's not a bad idea. I never thought about that because you're spending $90 at the courthouse, $30 to the sheriff's office, $120 right there. And yeah, they tack on, if they lose, they tack on that amount to them. But again, they're, like you said,
they're never going to pay it.
Yeah, they're never going to pay it. You could do a judgment, lean against them, but if they're, it's a pain in the ass.
Think about this too. Yeah. Let's just go with a modest rate of $1,000 because anybody listening to your show doesn't have to get a whiteboard out to figure this out. So if there's 30 days in a month at $1,000 a day, that means you're losing $33.33 a day. So if you offered somebody, let's say $500 cash, all right. So that means that's basically equivalent to 15 days that you just saved or spent, however you want to look at it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So in other words, if you got them out immediately and saved and gave them $500, and then we're able to get another renter back in within a few days, assuming there's not some astronomical damage to it done, then you actually just saved yourself money. And that's at $1,000, which many of the places are above that now.
Yeah, that definitely makes more sense. And it's just, all the, you have to fill all the paperwork out, and it's just more time because courthouse is busy as it is. And then, like I sat in small claims court for almost 2 hours the other day. And the person didn't even show up, and I know they didn't show up. And I was hoping, I was telling the manager, they're not here. I'm here at 10. It's now 10:45. Are you going to make me wait? Really? And yeah, we're going to make you wait. I'm like, because other people were in front of me. And, we all had a, 10, 10, 15, 10:30. I was like, come on, guys. But yeah, it was a waste of time.
Look, I don't want to beat this horse to death, but you sent 2 hours down there.
Yeah.
No way, dude.
Yeah.
No way. Not for $500.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah. Totally agree. So tell us about your first deal experience here in Fayetteville.
From an investment perspective. Yeah. My first deal so far, knock on wood. My first deal is the only deal that we lost money on. But I literally had no idea what I was doing other than all the books I had read and stuff. And I had no mentorship whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, there's other reasons I made mistakes, obviously. But so my first deal was this, man. I was sitting at a Special Forces Association meeting, and there was a older gentleman sitting there near me talking, and he basically was frustrated because his child, who he had let rent his place out, had not only destroyed it, but hadn't paid the rent in like over 2 years, right?
What
So it
in
was
the
in
hell?
foreclosure. Yeah. And it had been in foreclosure for like 18 months. And I'm like, dude, are you sure that you still even own this property? And he's like, so I advised him to call. He called and he's like, dude, he's like, yeah, he's like, they actually said they're going to fully close the thing out in the next 2 weeks. And so I was like, well, what do you owe on that thing? And he goes, I don't know, man. It's like $27,900. And I was like, listen. And I said, I will give you $29,000 for that house. And the reason why I'm going to give you 29,000 is because he had let me go take a look at it on the weekend. I'm like, it's a complete and utter shithole. And I said, this is damn near a full gut renovation. And I said, this is 2019, by the way, pre-pandemic. So I said, I'm going to have to put a sizable amount of, it wasn't in a great neighborhood. It wasn't horrendous, but it definitely wasn't a great, like on a scale of 1 to 10, it was probably like, a 4 or 5. So I didn't want to go too crazy, I like to renovate nicely. You and I get in our little spats about that because poor James's mom is like, actually, your mom ended up agreeing with me. Let's not go off on a tangent. Don't poke me, James. Yeah. All right. So here we go. No, listen. So I said, hey, here's the deal, man. You'll get $1,000 and you won't get the foreclosure on your, granted, it's already probably destroyed your credit, but at least it won't go into foreclosure, which is even worse. And he said, sure. So I asked, I ended up seeing a buddy that I hadn't seen since the 90s that we served in Ranger Battalion with. And I was like, bro, how you doing? One thing I said, yeah, I'm trying to get in real estate investing. He said, yeah, I do some of that stuff too, but I just don't have time. But I would definitely be willing to partner on a deal or something. I said, hey, I found a deal. You give me $40,000 and I'll pay you 10% and I'll give you the money back in 4 months. And he's like, yeah, man, let's do it. So he gives me the $40,000. I buy the property and then borrowed another $30,000 to cover the renovation costs. Same principle. And so anyway, long story short is I ended up finishing it. It took 4 months and 2 weeks. So I was over by 2 weeks. The reason why we ended up losing $13,000, again, being my first deal, I didn't look to find out that the city had assessed that property to tie into the city water lines, and it was never paid. And so it didn't come out when I bought it because I bought it so fast. I closed on that deal in 72 hours, by the way, which is insane because I basically...
No title search?
Say again?
No title search?
No, I did do a title search, okay. Right? But we didn't do anything else. Again, mistakes, right? I didn't do my own due diligence. I was so excited about the prospect that I was going to pick up this house for $29,000. I'm like, the dirt's got to be worth that much. So anyway, I had reached out to an attorney and I told her, I said, hey, can you pull this stuff in advance? She's like, well, if you don't end up closing this deal, you're still going to have to pay. I was like, how much? She's like, $400. I'm like, do it. Like, fine. When he's ready to go, I want to close because otherwise people are going to keep ping ponging back and forth. Let's do this thing. So anyway, that ended up being I think it was an $8,000 mistake. It was about $5,000 or $6,000 with late fees and all that for the city assessment that had never been done for that area. And then another couple $2,000 to $3,000 to tie into the city sewer line. The second mistake is that there was a fireplace and the whole thing was in really bad shape. What I should have done is just sealed it and taken it out, but I didn't. I flipped it. And that fireplace ended up turning into, $10,000 when I had no idea what that type of stuff was going to cost back then, you know? So anyway, they were learning lessons, but here's the good news. At that time, I shattered every price barrier that had ever been done in that market. And a lot of people were like, dude, you put granite in here and you put these countertops in this floor, like it's too nice for this area, but it got top dollar. So had I not made those 2 mistakes, we would have probably made a little bit of money, but nothing great. But again, that was my first deal ever. And then from there, we jumped straight into multifamily.
You still have that first property?
No, I sold it. It was just a flip.
It was just a flip. Okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
But I saw it go back on the sale. I saw it go back on the market. I don't know, like 6 months ago, and I was like, dude, I wonder what they're selling that thing for. And it was like, it wasn't double, but it was probably 70% additional onto what I had sold it from. And I was like,
oh yeah, since the pandemic, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Yeah.
Well, that period in time frame was an exception for everybody. Like, I keep talking about how this market doesn't appreciate crazy, but during that time, this market appreciated crazy. And honestly, probably to right side some of it, because it did grow kind of slow compared to some other places. But obviously everything else was kind of exacerbated by the situation. So when I saw that, it's just one of the things I talk about all the time where, real estate is about the long-term buy and hold and building generational wealth over time. It's not about, yes, you can flip it and make money, but really, in my humble opinion, it's about the long game.
Yeah, I know we've talked about that also. And me personally, I'd rather, and I haven't done it yet, but a few, but I'd rather, buy it, flip it, and sell it. I know, the capital gains. I know you're probably cringing right now of the capital gains that would go attached to that, but it kind of goes back. We'll get into this a little later. Goes right into what you said earlier when we were off air. Is not worth the hassle. And I guess to me, I'm like, just my personal opinion. I'd rather buy it, flip it, and sell it, and then they're gonna get their capital gains. But if I do 4 or 5 homes a year, and we'll say roughly I make $20,000. I'm just throwing out easy math here. That's over $100,000 I made for 4 or 5 homes possibly. And I know things are gonna. I sound to make it picture perfect, but obviously I know it's not that way. But just thinking long term, like, okay, that could happen. So that's how I look at it. Yeah, I could get a capital gains, but I'm okay with it.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. I know you want to go on something else, but let me just say this. There's nothing wrong with what you're talking about, brother. It's a different strategy. It's a different game. The big differentiator that you and I talk about all the time is that if you're a flipper, it's a job, right? If you don't flip, you don't make no more money. It's over. And that's the big differentiator. So it's like, if you want to make 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand, 50, 100 grand on a flip, perfectly fine. But after that, it's over. And then the other thing that I would say, and we probably can't go into this because I know you're trying to do this but for you specifically, if that's kind of what you've been working on recently, because I know we talked about it, but it's been a while since you and I got to chat. Dude, I hope you're doing 1031 exchanges. And I also hope that you're working on self-directed IRAs where you don't have to have tax. You can tax defer all that money and reinvest it back into your projects. And if you're not, we need to talk off air because I tell you right now, there's some people, you won't have to pay those taxes, bro. And all of that cash will continue to compound. Now, that's a strategy thing that I would seriously get behind because you could make some sick money doing that, brother.
Well, then let's explain to the audience, what is a 1031? What is a 1031?
So a 1031 exchange basically says, I'm going to take the money and my profit margins that I made net off of this real estate property, and I'm going to reinvest it into another property. And therefore it's tax deferred, meaning there's no penalty paid on that when that money switches. So let's just use easy numbers, right? Let's say that you have a $300,000 house and you walk away with a $50,000 check because you've owned it for X number of years and you've built up some equity or whatever. So then you could take that $50,000 and you can put it into another project and you don't have to pay the taxes on it. Now, there's stipulations on it. And if I'm not mistaken, you have 45 days in which to be able to determine what property you're going to do. And you have to have some predetermined ones selected out and things like that. But there's all these, everything, what's the word I'm looking for? Everything has, there's a military or government term we use all the time when you kind of defer stuff and things. Anyway, there's always some type of document that you can do to kind of change your extents. But the bottom line is, you can take that money, you can put it into another property and you don't pay any taxes on it. And ultimately, you just want to keep doing that. I'm going to steal the words of a guy that I just interviewed the other day, good friend of mine named Rich Gamble. Shout out, brother. is that he's like 1031, 1031, 1031 die, right? Because if you keep doing that, you're never going to pay taxes. Then I added onto it, not that he didn't know, but I just wanted to spice it up for the listener's sake, right? Is that, okay, 1031, 1031, 1031 die. But in the meantime, you want to make sure that all of that money is in an account, a holding account, that's also going to be held by a trust, right? So then all of that money gets shifted over to your kids or whoever you want to leave that month, and they don't pay no taxes on it. Like, that's how the rich get stupid rich. But most of us don't know this stuff because we're not in those kind of conversations in and around our houses, typically growing up. You know, you were fortunate and your mom was in real estate. So you probably did hear some of those conversations, or at least had some inclination. But I can tell you, when I was eating Salvation Army cheese, we weren't talking about that shit, right? I was hoping that we got a Huffy freaking BMX bikes for Christmas, and that shit didn't happen, right? But anyway, you get my point. Is if you get savvy about this game, man, it's a way for you to make some real money, but more importantly, compound the crap out of that money over time.
Yeah, it definitely makes. Yeah. I've heard of 1031 exchange for it. I just want you to explain to the viewers out there.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Definitely. And with the IRA, what do you mean? How would you do that?
So a self-directed IRA is basically, there's a lot of different things you're going to hear about this. There's different types of them, right? You want to make sure you get with a reputable firm. But also people talk about it as a infinite banking, right? And so let me just give you an example. You got $100,000 sitting in the bank. It's earning 0.01%, you know, like everybody else's money. So you go to a company and you say, hey, I got $100,000. I want to put it in a self-directed IRA. This allows you to determine where and how that money gets invested, right? And there's a bunch of regulations and different things. I'm not going to go down in the weeds, but in general, just so it's very quick and easy for everybody to understand, if you want to take that self-directed IRA and use it to buy real estate, all of the proceeds have to come back into that account. So, but you're still earning money on that account. And when you pay the interest, instead of paying the interest to another financial institution, you're paying it back to yourself. It's sick, man. Like, again, it's shit that people don't talk about. So we don't know this. So again, back to my hypothetical situation. Let's say that you find a house and you buy it for $70,000, and then you're going to put another $30,000 of renovations into it, and you think this house is going to be worth $200,000 when you're all done. So you take $70,000 from your self-directed IRA, you buy that cash, which, oh yeah, by the way, gives you massive negotiating power. But when you pull that money, you're going to pay interest on that money, but you're paying interest back to yourself. All right. And then you can take that $30,000 out and you can complete the renovations. And then when you sell that, you're going to take all of that profit and you're going to put it back into that same account. And you just went from $100,000 to $200,000 plus the interest that you paid back to yourself. You're probably sitting at 205, 210. It depends on the length of time in the project. And then you're going to have your accountant and your tax people do all the paperwork to make sure that, you know, it benefits you. But again, this is all tax deferment as well. And then you're going to keep doing that. And every single time you do that, you're going to continue to grow that money, but you don't have to pay no taxes every single time that you're making that money. Make sense?
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So it's a massive way, and it increases your purchasing power significantly because, as you know, cash is king. So as a real estate agent, if you have a place that's very run down and you say, you know what, I care about you, I'm going to list this for you. I think this place could be worth $200,000. Let's stick with the same scenario. I think this place is worth $200,000. I think you're going to be lucky if you get 70 grand for this all day. Let's put it on the market for $79,000 or $99,000. And then all of a sudden somebody comes to you and says, hey, James, I want to use my VA benefits and I want to finance this thing. And dude, this ain't going to pass VA benefits, right? But another guy comes up to you and says, I'll give you $70,000 cash. I can close in 2 weeks. Hello. You're going to go back to your guy and you're going to say, look, man, I got somebody offering you $70,000 cash. It's up to you. It's your decision whether you want to do it. But this is real money. And so a lot of people are going to accept it, right? Depending on the situation. So cash is king. And if you have that sitting in that self-directed IRA, then you are your own bank and you're paying yourself your own interest and you're not paying taxes on anything you're doing. It's a killer way. Killer.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. So I know you talk about kind of get into air. I know with you get explain your boutique and stuff like that. And I know you, and I called it Airbnb. You're like, no, it's.
I know you always try to piss me off. It's cool. I love you though. I love you. Listen, for everybody out there listening, this is a deal. James got that shit stuck in his head with Airbnb. I told him, hey, I'm going to open up this boutique. He goes, oh, you talking about Airbnb? Poke me. I'm like, bitch, that's not what I'm talking about. Sorry. I probably shouldn't be swearing. I'm sorry. My bad. Your fault. Good. No, but anyway, so ever since then, since 2020, James always calls my little boutique hotel an Airbnb. I'm like, it's not listed on Airbnb. Although in fairness, we did end up using it a few times, but predominantly we list it on our own website. But ask your question. Let's do it. It's similar. I got you.
Yeah. So, I mean, with I know you like you said, you did Airbnb a little bit. So, like, what do you think Airbnbs? What's your opinion here? And, I pulled up an article. It's a little older article from Fayetteville, but Fayetteville allows Airbnbs. So that's what this article is about, if anybody's thinking about that. So.
Sorry, it buffered for just a second. I heard you say, what's your opinion about Airbnbs? Is that what you want me to talk about?
Yeah. What's your opinion? I mean, like I said, I got this article from Fayetteville, and Fayetteville, North Carolina does allow Airbnbs. It's an older article, but I don't think nothing's changed unless you know something that's changed. I know you kind of got your hotel boutique kind of centered around how Airbnbs are kind of work. So what's your take on Airbnbs here locally or even anywhere else?
Well, I do talk to people about this. I definitely wouldn't consider myself an Airbnb subject matter expert to somebody that does it every single day, all day with every single one of their property. Because again, we've dabbled and I've placed a few of our units on here from time to time to kind of bridge a gap if we had a lull. But to answer your question, obviously, Airbnbs in 2017, 18, 19, 20 were still like the new chick on the block, right? And so everybody wants to date her, and everybody's out there and they're buying a crap. They're throwing some paint on the walls, going to buy some wall pillows at Walmart, and they're like, "Here, pay me $100 a night." And you're like, "What?" So I think people have had success with them. I think they blew up, but I also think I know. Let's just take our market. There are a plethora of people that I know were doing it, 4 or 5 years ago and are not doing it anymore. And I think it's because like everything else, it's supply and demand, right? So it was the hottest thing, everything with the buzz, but then the more that regulation came down on it, both not just local regulations, but because we are close to a military town, who can and cannot is authorized to be able to stay at an Airbnb, because that's probably one of our biggest travel people here locally. I mean, there's others as well. So I think that generally speaking, though, there's, it's a great investment depending on the market that you're in. We like to go to Gatlinburg. If you go to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, I mean, holy Toledo, Batman. It seems like the whole town is at Airbnb. Because it's massive, massive tourism there. But they also have a lot more stringent rules and regulations on what you can and can't do and who's authorized and stuff like that. And there can only be a certain number in a certain amount of space and all this other stuff. I don't have it all memorized. But for us here, specifically in Fayetteville, North Carolina, from the people that I know that are still doing it, I think it's going well for them. But I think that what came out of that, and the point that I was kind of, poking at, is that if you were just doing a half-assed job, then you probably either didn't survive or you adjusted. But if you took it seriously and were really about trying to provide accommodations, because that's another thing that happened, and this is kind of just a side tangent, I'll try to keep it short, but I talked to a ton of people that travel to all these real estate meetup groups that you've seen me go to and these different seminars and things like that. And there are people that legitimately have rented out a place thinking that it was super luxury or bougie. And then they get there. This is true story, right? In Ohio, dude gets there, and literally as he's pulling up, there's a drug deal going out in front of the place. And then as they're getting ready to pull away, they hear gunshots and shit. And it's like, oh man, so it's like, you can market the crap out of a place and make it seem all fine. But if you don't know the area, then you don't know what you're really walking into. And so ultimately what I'm trying to say is that people want to, if they're paying a certain price, they want a certain experience and they want a certain quality end product, no matter what you're doing, whether you're eating at a restaurant or staying at somebody's place. And so I think the people that have survived have focused in on the fact of, if you provide a great end user experience, then it works. Then people are like, I'm okay paying this much money because I get all these other things I can't have in a hotel or that I prefer, right? Like not shared community space, et cetera, et cetera. It depends on the situation. So anyway, I don't know if I answered your specific question too much, but I would say in general, it's still working very well. Certain markets are significantly better than the others. But as far as like countrywide, there's definitely places where it's shut down and definitely places where it's been constrained compared to what it was, 3-5 years ago.
Oh yeah. I never thought it would work here. I did it for a little bit, for about 6-7 months, and after paying utilities and internet and all that stuff, and paying somebody to come clean it, after somebody leaves, I was kind of like, man, this is really. To me, it didn't feel like it was worth it, and I probably wasn't doing it correctly, like you said. My mom did it, and I was like, and then she's got to have her hand in everything, so it's kind of like she's over there trying to clean, 80-year-old lady trying to clean. I'm like, oh God, Mom, stop doing that.
Yeah,
yeah, I'll shake my head too, but I couldn't stop her. And then it got to a point where I was like, let's just rent it out traditionally, like you've been doing. I think it was a bad idea. And before we did that, we did, I forgot the name of the website, but it's kind of like what you were doing, running out to military. So we're kind of targeting, I think it's like Furnish something.
Furnish Finder.
Thank you, Furnish Finders. But so we rented out to a traveling nurse for about 4 months. That was great, because then we eliminated the whole having to clean, every other day or every day or every couple of days. Then we rented out to 3 soldiers, and who were hardly ever there. I think they were more in the field than they were in the place. And then on the weekends they go home if they're close enough to go home to see their family, or their family would come here. So it worked out great after that. And after that, I was like, yeah, let's just go back to traditional renting it out, long term, 1-year leases. So yeah, I think it'd work. I think it'd work better, like you said, Gatlinburg, any place that's a tourist area, in my opinion, it would work better. But it sounds great on paper. And then when you start adding up all the costs, you're like, okay, is it really worth it? And for some it could be, some it could not be. I think it depends on the area, like you said. So,
well, can I add a couple things to that real quick, just for people that are listening that may be interested? Yeah. Here's the thing, man. It all comes down to occupancy. Yeah. Right. If you're sitting at 80 to 90% occupancy consistently, you're probably going to be making so much money. But also, you're not going to hit those numbers if you're not consistently providing a great end product. And that's where I tell people, listen to me. If there's one thing that slapped me in the face, like, what, it's the fact that the hospitality industry is absolutely brutal. Even though you have checks and balances and systems and set up in place in order to try to automate the process, and Airbnb does all these other things for people that like we have to do for ourselves. The fact of the matter is this: if you're paying somebody $150, I'm just picking a random price. If you're paying $150 a night to stay in a place, and at 11:59 at night the AC goes out, your expectation is, I want that shit fixed time meow, right? And some people have a little bit better patience and understanding than others. We were on our 15th wedding anniversary, about to sit down for dinner in a restaurant in Boston, and the HVAC system went out, right? And so you can't ignore that. So then we instantly go into, how do we solve the problem, right? We're 1,000 miles away. So, we can get space heaters and this and that and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, the point is it's 24/7, 365. And if you want to, you got to want it, is all I'm going to say, man. Because I will tell you, there's multiple times where we have thought about quitting and walking away because you can't shut the door. It's like last thing is comparison is I talked to somebody who I know who owns a restaurant, and I said, listen, I'm not saying the restaurant industry is not difficult. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you shut the door at 10 o'clock at night, no one calls you and says, make me a burrito. It doesn't happen. They don't have your personal cell phone number. And if that's your friend, well, then that's your decision on whether you want to make them a burrito at 10:59 at night. That's on you, boo. Right. But what I'm saying is when somebody calls me at 11:30 at night and says, oh, yeah, your electronic lock isn't working and I can't get in, I can't be like, yo, I'll see you in the morning. And they'll be like, yo, I ain't going to pay you. And oh, by the way, I'm probably going to poop on your deck and leave it there too. You know what I mean? So it's like, you have to address the issue and it's immediate. It's immediate. And same thing, like the other situation that I always used to explain this is like, if you're renting out long-term to somebody, we're in North Carolina for anybody that doesn't know that's listening to this outside, lots of bugs, you have pests. Even if you try to mitigate it, you more than likely going to see one at some point during the summertime because there's just abundance here. Right. But if you're renting a long term and somebody sees a cockroach, you know, I know they want to call them some other crazy stuff, but they're cockroaches, right? Whatever. If you see that thing running across the floor and you're going to call your tenant and be like, you're going to call up your landlord and say, hey, I just saw some bugs crossing. Can I get somebody to spray? Reasonable expectation is that sometime in the next 24 to 72 hours, they're going to send somebody out after they make a service call and they're going to take care of it. But if you wake up in somebody's short-term accommodations and you see 2 cockroaches running across the floor or on the counter, you're going to be like, yo, I'm out, right? Because I'm not paying you $150 a night for that. Or, you know, I'm going to see, you need to get this resolved like now. So anyway, I know we belabored that point, and I'm just telling people that the hospitality short-term accommodation is absolutely brutal. And you need to be ready to work all the time or make enough money that you can hire people to do this stuff for you. That's it.
Yeah. And I know you're not doing the Airbnbs per se, kind of like it, but I mean, explain what you're doing with your hospitality boutique.
Well, again, I had an idea and concept of what we wanted to do, but I kind of walked into this niche, right? And the niche was this: let's buy small apartment complexes, somewhere between 6 to 12 units. Let's buy all of them and renovate all of them simultaneously so that we control the entire environment, not just a door. So that way I can run it kind of like a quasi boutique hotel, meaning, excuse me, you know, we ended up putting a gate on our property, so it's gated access. And we try to put things on the property like a little pavilion where people can have a cookout and a little walking trail and things like that. So we did that, and then we built our own website and we hired our own cleaning team. So we do everything like they would do. I call it a boutique hotel. People have been doing bed and breakfasts forever. Really, that's what it is, except for I don't serve you breakfast. You know, we do things that we try to make it because we want, you know, like we have a corporate membership at, you know, one of the gyms here so if people stay with us for extended stays, they get free access to that. We usually give very nice welcome gifts to people that stay. If they're just staying for a night or two, you can't, because there's not enough, you know, meat on the bone, if you will, by the time you get done paying your cleaning team and your electricity and stuff like that, which is why our minimum stay is 3 nights. We don't let anybody stay for a night or two, except for rare circumstances for guests that have already stayed with us. But anyway, so it's really like a bed and breakfast. And so we market ourselves, we clean it ourselves, we service it ourselves, everything. Our reservation system is ourselves. We don't do any of it through any other platform. Again, we have listed it sporadically on Airbnb, like a few rooms at a time, just to fill some gaps if we were at a low.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. I mean, you know, 'cause I knew what you were doing, but you know, to me, that's why I kept calling it Airbnb. Kind of like an Airbnb, but not like. But I see what you're doing with you got you know a bunch of duplex or 6 to 12 units in one area. So definitely not more like a hotel like that, like as you explained. So,
well, plus like when Airbnb first came off, like when we were trying to do some of that, like. How much were you paying for somebody to come clean your room?
It was like $60.
Yeah, it doesn't work, man. Yeah. For me, it doesn't work. Like if I'm charging you $99 to stay in the room for one night and you pay $65 to clean it, plus the electricity, plus your cable, for us, we were offering Netflix and YouTube TV Live so that people, could have that stuff, and you're paying for the Wi-Fi, and you're giving them, some snacks for when they're checking in, some coffee pops and soda, and they forgot their toothbrush, and you're giving that. You ain't making no money.
Yeah.
You ain't making no money. Yeah. It's not possible. And so we had to basically create our own cleaning team because, we pay them fairly well. It's come a long ways. It took us a while to kind of evolve it and stuff like that. But, people want these prices for flipping apartments. Again, in Gatlinburg, where you're renting out a place for $200, $300 a night because of the demand. Well, then fine. Pay somebody $100 to flip your unit. Cool. But, we're not getting those prices here. It doesn't work.
Yeah, because on the economics, supply and demand, I mean, we don't have that here. People are not coming to Fayetteville typically to, for like as tourists or vacation spot. That's not what they're coming here for. Usually, obviously, see friends, see family, or, like I was doing with the furnish finders, they're working here, independent contractor for a little bit. So,
yeah.
So house hacking, I know I remember you talking about it on a podcast about it, about your son doing house hacking, if I'm correct. So you seem to like it. I don't know if you're still into it, still liking it, think it's a bad idea. What are your thoughts?
No, it's an amazing idea. Yeah. The problem is that a lot of people aren't willing to do it because they're at a different point in their life. If you're married and you have 2 kids, do you want to rent out a room in your house?
Oh yeah.
No. Depending on some unique situations. Look, it goes back to my opening story. We didn't really kind of dive into all of that stuff. I threw some stuff out there and people were probably listening and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, this guy's a freaking retard. He's $127,000 in debt. I shouldn't use that word, right? But anyway, he's stupid. So anyway, the reason why I'm so passionate about it and the reason why I forced my kids to do it was because I'm like, listen, I want you to buy real estate and I want it to become an investment for you, but I don't want you to pay for it. Or I want to significantly reduce the amount of money that you're putting into it. So the one that I talk about, the first one before my son, was my daughter. And the story that I tell is that she was PCSing here to Fort Bragg, permanent change of station, coming here permanently. And she texted me a picture and she was all excited. And she's like, Dad, that's so cool. Like there's these 2 other girls and we're going to rent this place. And they're going to charge us $995 a month. This is 2019 too. Again, pre-pandemic. So if you recall back then, it was still very much a buyer's market here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which means what? It means generally speaking, you could get all of your closing costs paid for by the seller. And typically you would also be able to sneak in a few repairs here and there. Right. So, she's like, well, what are you talking about? I said, you're in a house hack. She's like, house what? I go, come on, get over here. So anyway, we talked about it and I said, you're going to buy a house. You're going to use your VA benefits with it. And then you're going to rent 2 of those rooms out inside your house to the same girls that you were going to rent for somebody else's apartment. Instead of paying down that guy's equity and principal balance, you're going to have them pay down your principal balance. And you are going to be the one that's going to have appreciation stacked with increased equity. And she's like, you think that's going to work? I'm like, it's going to, you literally already have the 2 girls. They already said that they're going to pay it. The only difference is the money goes to your bank account and you're using your VA benefits. So we went house hunting for her. And at that time, found her a cute little 3-2. It was roughly 1,400 square feet. I think it was listed for 97 or 99. We got it down to $95,000. All right. We got a free roof included in it and 100% of her closing costs paid for. So this as a licensed real estate agent, other people may not know this. That means that she brought $0 to the table. Yeah. 0, right? She didn't pay anything. Then 2019, $95,000 loan, 3% interest. Her PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance was $690, right? One girl's paying her $500, the other one's paying her $350. Do the math. $850 minus $690. Hello. She's not only paying for the mortgage anymore, or her interest, or her taxes, or her insurance. On top of that, she's damn near having 50% or greater of her utilities covered for on a monthly basis. So she went from going that she was going to split $333 a month with these girls to now, and plus utilities, to now she owns that house and they are paying for it for her. How effing amazing is that? Are you kidding me? That's why I'm so passionate about it. That's why I force the kids. That's why one of the things that I do all the time now is I mentor a lot of the military people. Now, I've heard arguments online that are completely against this. And I think there are situations where it doesn't make sense, right? But generally speaking, if you're a married couple or a single person and you don't mind renting out a piece of your house, and if you find the right house, there's somebody that I've helped twice now, right? If you find a piece of your house and you can section a piece of it off where they come in from a separate entrance and they never see you and they have their own bathroom and their own little kitchenette and stuff like that. Seriously?
Yeah,
Seriously? And from a military's perspective, and why I'm so passionate about mentoring, military people on this, is in the case of that person I'm referring to and my daughter, what does that mean for a military soldier? That means that you keep 100% of your BAH. That means I just increased your rank pay by probably 2 levels. If you're keeping roughly $1,500 in your pocket, are you kidding me? I just took you from an E6 to an E8 pay overnight. You're welcome, right? And you're building long-term wealth with that. So let's go back to my daughter's situation. That happened in 2019. Then she ended up leaving here in 2021 or something like that. I don't remember the exact day, right? And we rented it out to another soldier for $1,250. Her PITI was still $690. Are you kidding me? She owns the house and has never paid for the mortgage at all. Has there been a couple of repairs? Yes. But if you add up all that money that she's made, technically, did she pay for it? No, she did not. Yes, you repaired the thing. Now, here's the beautiful thing. Literally, probably about 3 or 4 months ago, I said to her, have you ever even looked at this place? Like, I wonder what it's worth today. And I went in and I looked at it. That house right now, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, $225.
220. Oh, it's close. Yeah.
I thought 200 too, yeah. But it's somewhere probably between it. If she sold it as is, it's probably closer to 200. But I told her if you went in there, did a couple little upgrades and stuff like that, you could probably squeeze out 225 for it. So let's go with 200,000 though, just because it's easy math, right? She's sitting on over $100,000 of equity, and she never spent $1.
Wow,
not one. Awesome. And so what I'm so passionate about and what I try to tell my fellow active duty and veteran friends is that if somebody had told me this when I got in, and if I had bought a place at every single duty station, by the time you retire, you are a millionaire. If you're modestly sitting on 6 to 8 places, and the average value is, let's call it $250,000, and a more than half of your portfolio, if not closer to 2/3 of it, is close or damn near all the way paid off. Are you kidding me? And that goes into the whole other thing about renting. We don't do that right now because I just took too much time to talk about that. But all I'm saying is house hacking is a phenomenal way for you to become a real estate investor if you're willing, and here's the key phrase, for delayed gratification. Maybe this isn't your dream house. Maybe you have to share some of the community space. Maybe you don't. But bottom line is, you are leasing out and sacrificing a portion of your house in order to gain long-term wealth strategy for you and your family. And that is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I mean, definitely like with your daughter, of course, she had 2 friends, and she was single, but yeah, it would be somebody who's obviously married like we are, and in our age, we're like, no, we're not doing that. But
I tried.
You tried.
No, listen, brother. Remember when I said that I was reading all those books and listening to podcasts back when we first got here in 2017? Yeah, I begged her, my wife, please let me buy. There was quadplexes up on Ramsey Street.
Well, quadplex is a little different, yeah.
I said, listen, we take 2 of them, we rent out 2 of them. And she's like, no, I'm not getting stuffed into a 2-bedroom apartment, because we still had 3 kids with us at the time. And I was like, listen, I'll sleep in a tent in the backyard. I don't give a shit. Like, I just want somebody else to pay our mortgage. But anyways, it didn't work out for me.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, to me, she basically got roommates. I mean, in a nutshell.
Mhm.
But you got to make sure it's somebody obviously you get along with, obviously friends, and you do share a common area, kitchen, bathrooms, whatever. You just have a roommate, but you're making all the money. So I think the ultimate goal would obviously, like you said, I've got a lot of investors that actually two soldiers right now who want to use a VA loan, they want to buy multifamily and do the same thing you're talking about. We don't have a lot of those here, so it's tough. And then when they do see one, it's not in the best area. And I've explained to them, I said these aren't in the best area. Some of these areas may be on the military ban. You might want to check before you jump into this, because they're kind of like, oh, I don't care. I was like, well, check first. I'm looking out for them, of course, and make sure it's not, because you'd be wasting your time, you'd be wasting your money for no reason. So,
but look, James, here, if you've already thought this, then you can just cut me off. But there are a ton of places here, though, that don't have to be multifamily, right? And so I'll give you an example. One is the tri-levels. Most of those tri-levels typically have a bedroom with a bathroom downstairs. Perfect situation. Put up a temporary wall for the 1 to 2 years. You're talking about paying a contractor. Let's say $1,000, right? Hey, put up a door here with a lock on it for $1,000, right? And I'm going to rent out the bottom stairs downstairs for you for $900 a month or $950 a month. And you get all the utilities, and maybe you let them use the laundry if it's in the garage. If it's not, then you don't. But the point is, there are certain floor plans. This is what I'm trying to emphasize. There are certain floor plans that are conducive to separation so that you don't have to see those people. And if somebody's going to buy a $200,000, let's say $250,000 house today, right? And they're going to get roughly 7% interest, 6.5, 6.75, whatever. And they're going to use their VA benefits. Well, their payments are going to be sitting up around the $2,000 mark, plus or minus, depending on their circumstances. And if you just rented out your room downstairs to Sally for $900 a month, she just paid 50% of your mortgage.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah.
So anyway, I would just tell you, with your two customers you got, there are some properties, brother, that it makes sense if you're just thinking about it the right way. When you walk in, like, hey, you could separate this right here and totally come in from the back door and you would never have to see us. I mean, just keep thinking about that for them. It doesn't have to be a multifamily per se. It still allows them to conceptually do house hacking.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I mean, we definitely have a lot of tri-levels here, so that that definitely is a thought. Oh, there's Vanessa. Hey, Vanessa, we're done. So good.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I know you guys never met before, Jamie. Vanessa, Jamie.
You hear echoing? I don't know if it's Vanessa's.
I think it is. She's messing things up late.
Oh, no.
Echoing everywhere.
Put on noise.
The only thing I can think of is...
Hello. Still doing it.
Is that better?
Maybe. Yes, it stopped.
Yeah, much better. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay. Yeah, Vanessa, we're just talking about house hacking. And James explaining he had his daughter who's in the military. She moved here, and then she bought a house for, this is 2019, for $95,000. Found two friends that was in the military with her, and then she basically rented. She had two roommates basically, and he was saying she's never
paid a dollar.
Never made a payment of her mortgage. Yeah, she PCS'd, rented it out traditionally. And she's still now reaping the benefits, and she bought it for $95,000. He did a little market analysis for her. It's probably worth about $225 now. So,
wow.
Yeah. So
that's such, that's such beneficial information, I think, especially for younger people. Like, the younger you start, the better. But I'm sad that I missed like an hour of it already. So I don't know how much I'm gonna have to go back on YouTube and watch it.
No, you're good. You're good. The next time I was going to ask you, like, with house hacking, and me and Vanessa dealt with this. With subject twos. What do you think about subject twos, Jamie? I can tell you my feeling, and I'm sure Vanessa could too, probably.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would ask, do either one of you even know who Pace Morby is?
I do not. No.
Yeah. So subject twos has been happening for quite a while. but only did it really blow up, I would say, in the past, like, I don't know, 3-4 years or so. And the reason why I brought up his name is he basically became like the face because he not only did a lot of it, but he actually leveraged his experience doing that and started mentoring other people and just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So a lot of these people that you mentioned prior to us coming on the call that's been calling you about different subject twos, I would not be surprised that they probably are either a student of his course or at least have consumed some of his content. But anyway, to answer your question specifically, what do you want me to start with? You want me to talk about what subject two is, or you want me to talk about the pros and the cons?
A little bit of both. I mean, just in case nobody knows what a subject two is exactly.
So a subject two is basically, and well, first of all, technically there are a ton of variations of this. So I think at the last count, there's like 27 different variations of it, but actually there's probably a handful of like 3 to 4 different types of scenarios that typically people will lay down when trying to do this type of structure. But the one that I've seen that's the most common is, and that's why it probably frustrates you, is let's say you got somebody who missed 2 of their mortgage payments and they've already gotten a notice that says, hey, either you're going to catch up this place or we're going to end up, starting the foreclosure process on you. And they can't. I'll give you a real world scenario of one that happened with me. So it was a soldier. I actually rented to him at one point, and his soon-to-be ex at the time had called me up and said, hey, I don't know if you know, but we're not staying together anymore. And, oh yeah, by the way, let's just call him Bobby, right? Bobby hasn't paid the mortgage in like 9 months, and they're going to foreclose on him. And I was like, oh, wow. So I ended up getting on the phone and talking to him. He was going through a lot of stuff in his life at the time. I'm not going to get into that. You can kind of decipher what that kind of means. But I just basically was like, dude, what do you want to do, man? Like, here's the deal. If you get this house foreclosed on you, it's going to be crap for your credit, and it's going to be very difficult. Eventually you will rebound from it, but it's going to take you a very long time. And so basically what happened was he had gotten the loan for, I think, roughly $200,000. I don't remember everything perfectly. I think his balance at the time was like $130 something thousand, and he needed about $20,000 in order to catch it up. I went and looked at the place, and it probably needed at least $20,000 to $30,000 of renovation / cosmetic surgery in order to be able to get it, but it could potentially have sold somewhere between, let's say, $220,000 to $240,000. So at that time, you have a couple different options, and that is, if the person agrees to it, essentially what they're saying is this: I already have my name on the loan. I'm going to now sell this to you. And I'm still going to keep that loan in my name, but you're going to be the one that makes the payments for it every month. And then there's a bunch of legal documents that you do in conjunction with this. And then that way that person's able to still keep the mortgage payments at the current rate that they are. And then they potentially, in the situation that we were discussing, have time, let's say 3 to 4 months, to flip the property, put it back on the market, sell it. You would pay off the principal balance. That person would be out of it. And then, you would potentially keep the spread for A, saving him, and B, getting it back on the market. And there's so many negotiation terms within that. But in short, a subject to is you are using somebody else's current credit loan, and then you're taking over that loan and you're making the payments for them.
Hey, Jamie, quick question on that. So if they can potentially flip it to get more money out of it and then be able to pay the debt, who puts in the money for the flip if that was the situation?
The investor, because that person's in that situation, because just to be super blunt, they're in a shitty situation.
Okay. And then does the investor take a cut from that once the home sells?
So it's already worked out, Vanessa. So it's the opposite. Think about it the other way. You would potentially negotiate a cut for that person for allowing you to do this.
Got it.
So let me give you an example. So back to that scenario, it's like, hey, look, man, I'll offer you $5,000 when everything closes. So one, you just stop the foreclosure from happening from him. And two, he gets to walk away with 5,000. Like it's a double win for him. He's literally going to lose it at that point anyways. Right. And I'm talking about a little bit more of an extreme case. These are ones where it potentially makes sense. There's a lot of situations where it doesn't make sense when people are just trying to get into houses that these issues don't necessarily type of occur. Anyway, in that particular situation, he doesn't necessarily get any money up front, because here's the other thing. When that happens, you also have to pay whatever is in arrears, right? Mm-hmm. So in that particular situation, there was going to be a check that needed to be written for, I think, around $28,000, if I recall, in order to bring it completely current, including all the lawyer fees.
Okay. And then, so 2 questions for you. Is this something that you recommend to investors? And then the second question is, how do you get the money for that? Like, do you use cash? Do you use a VA loan? What kind of loan would you use for that?
You can't use a VA loan for that. They would tell you go fly a kite in a thunderstorm, as my mom likes to say. You would have to use private money or hard money lenders like that. Do I recommend this? Look, there's a lot of people out there that I've seen recently that absolutely despise this methodology. And I think that for the most part, I understand where they're coming from. And I think it has more chances of getting people in trouble if you're not doing it properly. But even if you're doing it properly, it's still risky, right? But in situations where, like I'm talking about, where potentially somebody is literally on the verge of losing the house altogether, but willing to be open to this concept and, are doing it with somebody that has some type of reputation that they can back and fail, because, again, that's why I say that situation, because that person's going to go into foreclosure already. But if you got somebody that's paying their house perfectly on time and they're in a VA funded loan, why would you do that with somebody else? It doesn't make any sense. It makes zero sense. It makes sense to them because they want to get in the house for the littlest cost as possible. But from an investor standpoint, the reason why potentially some of these deals are great is, well, I don't have to get financed for that whole house. It's already financed. So when you're trying to figure out, like, how do I make money out of this? It's like, all I have to come up with is the $30,000 to make it current and $30,000 to flip it, and maybe some additional costs that we're not talking about right now. And then I can then, in theory, walk away with, let's not be ridiculous. Let's say I walk away with a $30,000 check, right? After I pay the investors back their money. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't do that on it. Here's the big thing you're going to hear from a ton of people when they talk about these is, what about the due on acceleration clause? Well, from all the stuff that I've talked to with many people that have done this, can the bank, if they get wind of this and find out, can the bank call you and say immediately to the new person, we want the entire principal paid off in full? The answer is, legally, yes, they can. But in like 98 to 90% of all the circumstances I've heard from people that have done this, and it's quite a few, that virtually never happens. And the reason why is because as long as the bank is getting their money, they don't want that thing to go into foreclosure. They are going to lose more money by allowing it to go into foreclosure than to allow this to happen, that's somebody that's actually paying it.
Yeah.
So I would say most of the time they don't end up accelerating it. And the couple people I know that did get phone calls, they basically talked about exactly what I just said to you. And typically their response was concurrence and that just please make the payments. Because again, they're going to have to pay attorney fees. Then it's going to go up for auction. They're going to have to pay for all that. And in that case, what if that house only auctioned for $95,000? Well, then they're going to write off $40,000, $50,000 of loss or more or they can just allow this to happen, get everything caught up, and then somebody's going to renovate the house and it's going to have more value. Like, I don't know, if that was my money, I'd be like, yeah, do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, let me say this last thing. What I would just say is, to answer your first question, I don't think that it's advisable for this to be the primary way people should do it. There are people that have done it very successfully. So I ain't going to hate on them, but there's other ways to get involved in investing without having to straddle these legalities. And, it's challenging.
Yeah.
And that's what I've had, a couple of listings I've had, and we talked about off air, Jamie, but go listen to that, they're calling, and these, my listings are, for the ones you're calling about we're not in distress, like you said. Yeah, definitely. If, the seller is in a bad situation, like your friend was, and then, yeah, I could definitely see where it helps them out and, saves them from, going to foreclosure. Possibly they get a couple, 5,000, we'll say, like you said, and, go on their merry way. And either that person, the buyer, is either going to flip it, like Vanessa said, or rent out themselves. But some of these subject twos are like so pushy. And I was telling Jimmy off air, Vanessa, like I had one guy about a month ago, he presented it to me and my client said no. And then he called me back later and goes, how'd you present it? He's like being all pushy. I was like, who the hell are you, man? I was like, no, you're nobody to me. And if he doesn't want to do it, I don't think you presented it correctly. So I don't give a shit what you think, man. Yeah. We had a few words, but other than that, do it. So he kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And what my seller was worried about was like, I'm not in distress, first of all. Second of all, I can rent it out next week if it comes out that we can't sell it. And he ended up doing that anyway. Been on the market for about 60 days. He was, hey, I'm going to sell it. I'm not selling, I'm sorry, rent it out, which I advised in the beginning because he only had it for like a year. And he was losing money on it anyway. But that's another story in itself. But, he was like, no. So let's say, he makes my mortgage payments for the next 2 years. And now my VA entitlement is I moved like a PCS to another area. And he decides that he can't make a payment anymore. Now I'm stuck. And I was like, yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's always pros and cons, like with anything we're going to do. And, I'm looking out on my seller side. So I'm like, no, I don't like it. But then the point you just brought up, Jamie, definitely makes sense. If someone's in distress, then yeah, it could definitely help them out. So, I could see now both sides of it now more clearly. I'm like, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, for somebody that has an active mortgage that's not in arrears, and they're not going through a divorce, again, that's another one of those situations where potentially, you're helping them. But the bottom line is, if you're not solving a problem for the other person, then it makes zero sense why they would even want to consider that as a viable option.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you had anything, Vanessa.
I actually do. I have several questions for you, Jimmy, but and please, if they've already been answered, then just skip on to the next. But I guess I was thinking more of it like from the point of view of someone that wants to get in investing that's never done it before. So let's see. So how much, and I'm going to give you 4 back to back, and then you can answer whichever ones haven't been answered yet. Okay. How much money do I need to invest in real estate? Number 1. Number 2, what financing options are available to real estate investors? Number 3, how do I calculate the ROI? And number 4, what are the tax benefits of real estate investing?
Man, you guys got like another hour.
I'm here all night, man. Go ahead.
Hey, the first one that you asked, Vanessa, is very general, and I don't mean that in a negative way. What I'm simply saying is it's very interesting. So I actually had a guy on a podcast yesterday who
Oh, you froze up, Jamie.
Real estate was complete opposite of mine. Sorry, did I cut out? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. You might want to start over from the beginning. You said you had a guy on a podcast. Last thing we heard.
All right, my bad. So I had a guy on a podcast yesterday, very good friend of mine. We've gotten to know each other really well over the past couple of years. Our situation our entry into real estate investing is completely opposite. And what I mean by that is he liquidated all of his assets in California. He had a decent pool of money. It wasn't crazy, but a decent. And he moved to Tennessee and he started and he had the money. You weren't here earlier to hear. I was $127,000 in debt. I had $5 in the bank. And I said, I'm going to be a real estate millionaire. And that's how I started. Right.
Wow.
So you're like, well, that's crazy. Like, that's not even possible. So that's kind of where we can go into like getting much deeper into it depends on your circumstances. Right. And, what I will say that, the guy on the podcast said yesterday was in some ways he almost wished that he had started from broke position because he thinks that he may have been able to move faster. Ironically, I moved incredibly fast and went from $0 to a $6 million portfolio in 36 months. Wow. But I went so fast that I caused a bunch of problems that I'm now currently dealing with. That's a separate topic. We won't open that can of worms unless we need to. Not because I won't talk about it, but because I want to make sure I stay on track with your question. So here's my answer to you. When I have some of my military friends come to me and say, Jamie, I really want to get involved in real estate investing, and I have $25,000 to get started, but my credit score is 500, right? Maybe they went through a divorce or something, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be because they're a turd burglar. It could be because they legitimately went through some life crisis that put them in that situation. We've all been there. Most of us have. Well, then I'm like, well, great. Have you ever heard this before, Vanessa? Do you want 10% of a watermelon or 100% of a grape? Have you heard that?
Neil says something similar to, what does he say, James? 100% of
100% of nothing's nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, still nothing.
So what I'm trying to say to you is that's the mentality on how I had to take. My first deal was this, and I'm oversimplifying it. After being rejected by numerous people because they said, I love your enthusiasm, I love your concept, but it's never going to work. My concept was I'm going to open up luxury hotel for traveling military people. Okay. They're like, it's not going to work. So when I finally got somebody to do it with me, I said, I need $500,000 and it will take me 18 months. But in exchange for that, I will give you 50% of the deal. Right. And some people said, dude, you're crazy. Why would you give away 50%? And I was like, because I have $5 in the bank and I'm $127,000 in debt. I will do 100% of the work. I have the vision, the passion, the motivation, the desire. I will make this shit happen. I don't have no funds and I don't have the credit worthiness. He had the funds and the credit worthiness, right? So I like to tell people, and everybody has different ways of describing it. This is my own little way, but you got to have the deal. You got to have somebody to operate it, right? You got to have credibility. Finance, you have to be bankable and you have to have liquid. You got to have cash. So what I'm saying is you need those 4 things to get into real estate. And if you don't have them, you need to either be extremely creative or you need to partner with somebody that has one of those 4 legs. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the reason why I'm explaining it like that is because for anybody listening, I'm simply saying, depending on what your unique circumstances are, you either can do it by yourself or you may have to partner with somebody. All right. So like in my daughter's situation, if we want to go back to that situation, because we already talked about it, she had access to a 100% financing because she's a veteran, right? So she was able to use her VA benefits. And she had a good credit score. Great. So she was able to use those assets in order to be able to get into it, but there's other people that don't. And I've met tons of people that have cash, but they don't have no time, right? And so they're like, I don't even know where to start and I don't want to think about it. I just want to keep working, but I want my money to make more money than it is right now. Jamie, this is where I came up with this phrase, and I got a t-shirt. Maybe I'll send you one if you wear it. Both of you guys have to wear it.
We'll wear it. We'll wear it on the video.
If you wear it on your next video, then I will buy you both of a shirt. And this is my phrase. I say trust times 2 equals money for you. If you trust the person and you trust the concept with my balloons, right? Then the people will give you the money. Okay. And so that's what it was, right? Like a lot of the reason why I was able to raise that capital that I raised is because I eventually found somebody who believed in the concept, but also trusted me, right? Because we knew each other since we were 9 years old. And he's like, dude, I know you. So I know that was really long-winded, and it's not overly specific, but everybody's situation is uniquely different. All I'll tell you is that everybody can get involved in real estate if they really wanted to. The question is, are you going to be greedy and you want 100%, even though you know that your circumstances won't allow you to have that? Or are you just going to sit there and talk about it and not take action, even though you have everything that you need to get started? So does that...
Yeah. Yes.
Anything specific you want me to expound upon that specifically before I go to your next one?
No, I think if we go down specifics and there's a million different situations, we'll be here all night. But yes, basically, I understand what you're saying.
Okay. Because I just want to make sure I'm providing the right content for whoever you guys, targeting to listen to this. Refresh my memory. Number 2, what was number 2?
Number 2, how do I analyze? No, that was another question. What are the risks of? No, that was another question.
I should have.
So I know it was what? How do I calculate ROI? What financing options are available to investors, and what are the tax benefits to real estate investors, if any?
ROI, basically, most investors are going to talk about 2 things. They're going to talk about your cash on cash return and your IRR, which is your internal rate of return. So your cash on cash return is simply like, hey, if I'm putting in $100,000 in on this project and I'm making $10,000 a year, then I'm making a 10% return on my money. And there's a lot of different variables that people use, and they talk about cap rate and they talk about the 1% rule. Like, for example, hey, if the mortgage is $2,000, then I need to get at least $200,000. I need to get $2,000 to collect on rent in order to be able to cover my stuff. That's kind of changed a little bit because interest rates have went up significantly. But as far as what's your return on investment, you're trying to figure out what your money's doing. The thing that I don't want people to lose sight of that I talked about with James extensively, so I won't go too deep into it. I'll just use it as a slight recap is, do you want to make money on every door that you own? Yes, you do. That's understood. And I'm saying that because what I'm about ready to say is going to rub some people wrong way. All I'm simply saying to you is this. Let's just say hypothetically that you break even. You don't spend no money and you ain't making no money, but you own the property for 20 years and you've never spent $1 and you've never made $1. Did you make any money?
Yes.
Because
when you sell that house, it's all yours and you didn't put any money into it.
Because that continues to appreciate while somebody else is paying down your principal balance, which creates this massive equity thing over time. And that's what I'm telling people. It's the reason why I love real estate is it's virtually impossible to lose. The only way that you can lose is if you're in a situation where you're required to sell. And that's all about your strategies and entry into that. Did you buy at the right price? Did you pay? Are you over leveraged, right? I cut out again, didn't I?
Just
Briefly.
a little bit. Yeah.
I think it's my side. It's very annoying. I apologize to all you people.
Good, man.
But the point is that you're still making money. But a lot of people want to get wrapped around the axle about, if I'm not making X number of hundreds of dollars per door today, then I'm not making any money. That's bullshit. That's not true. That's not accurate, right? But ideally, yes, of course you would. I am not in any way, shape, or form, to be very clear, advising people to intentionally go out and buy a property and not make any money off of it on a monthly basis. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just simply saying that it's very difficult to lose in real estate over the long haul because most things are going to appreciate. And if you ain't paying down the principal, you're winning. That's it. As far as your return on investment, right? So talk a little bit about cash on cash and your IRR, and then we're talking about, gaining equity growth within property. The tax benefits to real estate, it would be a separate podcast in and of itself. We did talk a little bit about 1031 exchanges earlier, so I don't want to go rehash all that. but that's your ability to be able to move cash from one project to another without ever paying taxes for. But there's a ton of other things that you can do. Look, I'm very open with people about the numbers, and I'll tell you this. Over the 4 years that we did the first 12-unit property, you remember when AT&T came out, they had this thing called rollover minutes? Yes. If you had 100 minutes and you only use 80, you got 20 added on to the next month, so now you have 120.
Right.
I have nearly $400,000 in tax deferments that I haven't used yet because of all the money invested in the properties. In other words, if you wrote me a check for $400,000 today, I wouldn't have to pay taxes on it because I still have shit rollover minutes from before. So how did that happen? Again, there's so many there's things like cost segregation where you pay somebody to come down and literally itemize every aspect of your property, what the value is, how it gets expended over time. And you can use this for massive tax deductions and stuff. There's so many different things. I mean, it's such a big beast. And I am absolutely not a subject matter expert on it, but I have read enough books or been in and around the right circles and talking about it that I understand the concepts, but I definitely by no stretch of the means have every single thing figured out. So we talked about, let me just end with this though. Real estate is a massive, massive tax write-off in so many different ways. Why do you think that when people that are uber wealthy and they're like, I need a place to put $50 million, there's times that they go buy apartment buildings. They don't even care if it's making money. I know that sounds ridiculous. They don't care. It's all about the tax benefit. Do I write a check to the government for $20 million or do I buy this thing and just let my money sit there, buy it and let it sit there? I didn't lose any and I didn't make any. I'm good. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm oversimplifying it. There's people that will probably listen to it and be like, dude, what about this and this and that? Dude, it gets very complicated in different scenarios based on each and every single person's situation and what kind of money you're talking about.
Right. I have more questions, but I know that we're at an hour 37, so I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead.
Give me one. Let's hear.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so here's several that are geared more towards once you flip it and you're renting it. And that is, well, 1, how do I find good tenants? 2, should I hire a property manager or should I manage myself? 3, how do I determine the right price? And again, I think that goes back to the ROI. And what are common landlord expenses that people should budget for?
Well, I told James I don't really rent out long term, so it's a little bit challenging. But 2 of your questions I can easily answer just because I have rented out some and they make sense. Man, the second question you had was right at the top of my head and that just slipped out.
Should I hire a property manager or manage myself?
Yes. Property management. Listen, I'm going to tell you what I tell everybody that comes to me and asks me. I tell them,
not to cut you off, James, before I forget, but that be for multiple properties, or we're saying like 1 or 2, or
I'm about ready to say that you stole my thunder. Thanks, James. I still love you. No, look, this is exactly what James just said. I tell people, look, if you have a property and you're dying to have the experience and you want to understand that, you want to touch it, feel it, breathe it, smell it, that's cool. Like, I get it. It's fine. But, when my son came to me and he's like, well, Dad, it's only 1. Like, I'm going to do it. And I'm like, I'm telling you right now, you don't want that. You don't want that. You don't want to have to deal with that shit. He's still active duty. I'm like, you don't want to deal with that when you're sitting there in the middle of the day and all of a sudden, let's say the water pipe busts. Well, who are they calling? They're calling you. And you're sitting in the field, or you're in a situation where you can't get to your phone because you're not allowed to have your phone on you for the next 6 hours, right? Again, and in this case, he ended up deploying, and guess what happened? Exactly what I just said. And so I told him, I was like, dude, I told you. Like, now you're sitting halfway around the world, and the last thing you need to be worried about is whether or not, in this particular case, the HVAC, I think, had went out. I'm like, you don't want to worry about that. It's crazy. So my opinion is, what I tell everybody is, I was like, look, if you have the bandwidth for it, or your spouse is going to help you out, or you just want the experience and stuff like that, cool. Manage the property. But otherwise, pay a property management. It's challenging to find good ones, but there are good ones out there. The 10% that typical for most people to charge is absolutely worth it. $1,500, they pay you $150. Sweet. Be done with it. So my recommendation is maybe dabble if you want the experience, but at some point, unless you just have a crap ton of time on your hand and you really love dealing with, well, maybe you get lucky and every single one of your tenants is beautiful. But good luck. I don't think that that's going to happen, which kind of leads to the other question you asked about how do you find good tenants and screening. Honestly, I chose a very specific niche, right? I wanted to build a boutique hotel experience, and that's what we did. We don't really focus on long-term tenants. But every time that I've considered going into the long-term tenant thing, the one thing that makes me not want to do it is what you just asked me. Because here's the thing, there are laws. And you know, nobody wants people to come into their place and intentionally trash it or not take care of it. But you don't know until they get in there. Right. And then you have to deal with that. And it's very difficult. And so there's other people that have figured out better systems and processes in order to be able to screen people and feel like they have the greatest likelihood of finding them. And rather than figuring that out, I just rather pay property management. Again, it goes back to the 10%. Worth it. Absolutely worth it.
And I actually have a little story on that myself. We bought our first home in Texas and we rented it out when we moved to Germany just because we wanted to put more equity into it. And we hired a property manager and it wasn't a good property management. So I don't know how they screened them really, but they were only in there 3 months. We managed to get them out at the 3rd month, but we had to put $10,000 back into the home because when we went back into the home, when the property management went back in and looked, there was feces on the ceiling where they had just thrown it up. And I don't know if they were upset because they were getting kicked out. And so they purposely, maliciously did it.
Yeah, probably.
They had left a big aquarium full of dead fish that looked like they had been dead forever. I mean, the whole house stunk. It was just a horror show. And so we sold it and we were kind of scared to ever do that again because you know, we thought, you know, with a property manager, we're going to be a little bit more secure. And we obviously didn't find the right one because it was a nightmare.
And that is a story that is told by so many people. And all I would say to you specifically, Vanessa, is that I would not let that deter you from ever doing it again, because there's real wealth to be built in real estate and it's over time, right? That's my opinion. It's over time. And so you just need to probably be a little bit more diligent or do your own due diligence as far as finding the right property management group. But the reality is it's still possible that can happen again. But there's also, you know, massive wins. I'll just share this because I didn't share it earlier. Is my son, I also forced him to house hack his first one in Savannah. The people that he got in there ended up not being great tenants. And he not only had a difficult time getting them out. He was house hacking, so he's living there with them, and he still had a difficult time getting them out. And ended up having to use law enforcement too. So lots of phone calls. He was stressed out. He was not excited about the project, to say the least. And I was feeling bad because I had already kind of had him buy a house that was a little bit at the top of his price point. So it was a little bit, you know, of a risk. So now he's not getting that money. Plus he's dealing with that. Plus they caused damage. Luckily, you know, he navigated that storm. And the good news story is this: he bought the house for $285. And because of what happened in 21 and 22 with the appreciation across the country, that house is now probably worth close to $450. And so he's gained over, you know, $150,000 in equity in less than 36 months. And what he nor I also knew is we didn't know that Kia was building a new factory at the time. And they were a lot of people coming over. And so he had a renter who rented his house out for 3 years and put the entire first year down payment.
Oh, wow.
And was paying him $1,000 a month over what his mortgage payment was.
Oh, nice.
That is awesome.
So typically on a single door rental, things are changing, but a lot of people, generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, if you're making a couple $100 a door or greater on a single family home, after you've done everything, you're doing all right. If it's 3 or 4, great. And obviously short terms are going to change things. That's all variables. But I'm like, are you kidding me, dude? Like, even after you pay your freaking property management was a flat fee of $150. I'm like, you're banking $850 a month on a single door, and your properties has $150,000 of equity on there. And again, we couldn't have timed it any perfect, but I think his interest was like 3.25, and I was like,
wow,
dude, you are so lucky.
Yeah.
Did I answer it?
You did. Yeah.
We
for
got
sure.
anything else? Did I miss one?
No. No, I think that's it.
All right, Jen, I got one last question for you. So, and I know, of course, you're a real estate agent. So, but how do you? Is there, other than the MLS, is there any other ways you find your deals typically?
Yeah. I mean, I would say predominantly they're not on the MLS. Look, if you, and I'm more heavily into the multifamily space than the single family, but the thing that I say all the time, not only from my military years, but from, almost 6 years of entrepreneurship, is that relationships matter and networking is everything. Networking and mindset. Are you kidding me? Like, those are the two secret sauces that people just have to have framed out properly. So the reason why I'm saying that is, if they build a phenomenal relationship with you, James, and you hear about a deal that's coming on the market, and that this person doesn't kick tires and they're willing to actually drop, who are you calling first? You're going to call that person, right? Mm-hmm. And then typically after there, you're going to start working. But if you know that you got somebody that's like, James, listen, man, list the property, but if you want to get somebody that will give me $150,000 for this cash, like, I'm ready to walk away. And you might go to breakfast with somebody and be like, hey man, I got somebody that's looking for, a house, and you're like, oh, cool. So anyway, networking is everything. I don't want to ramble on about it. And that's how people find a lot of deals, especially in the commercial space more than residential. Like, in the commercial space, if you're not in networks, it's hard to find good deals, because by the time you probably hear about them, all the really good deals have probably been picked.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I don't see a lot of commercial buildings. You other than driving by going, oh, that's empty. I wonder what they're going to do with it. Then you kind of do your research, find out what's going there, what's happening on, like, the Big Lots right next to, the building we work in. It's shutting down, or it's shut down. And then Neil found out that I guess somebody bought out Big Lots and they're going to reopen it again. I'm like, what? That's crazy. Yeah. He was telling me the other day. I was like, okay, that was kind of a waste of time.
Well, look, if there's one thing that I've learned from being in some of these higher net worth individual masterminds and things like that, is when people have like real dollars, brother, it's a whole different game. It's a whole different game. And so there might be people that did what you just said just because it was some type of circumventing tax situations, or to cut losses on something that happens. I mean, who knows? I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, true. All right, guys. I want to thank you, Jamie. I know you stayed a little longer. But I do appreciate it, and you definitely a wealth of information. So if anyone want to reach out to you, Jamie, how would they reach out to you?
Well, you got my phone number up there in big fat numbers. I'm on all social media platforms. I predominantly only look at Facebook. I'm on all the other ones, but I just don't have time. So, and because in real estate, a lot of times stuff gets marketed on Facebook, then that's where I spend a lot of the time. So yeah, that's probably the best way. And then, I've I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I'm always kind of working on mentorship because I've had a lot of people that have reached out and said, "Hey, man, I'd love if you would help me find my first deal or whatnot." So I have my own webpage, which is visionemotion.co. That's visionemotion.co because .com was already bought, and I wasn't going to pay $10,000 for the name. So anyway, visionemotion.co is my website, and so if somebody's looking for that type of one-on-one mentorship, I'd be loving to do that. And also, not too long ago, I started a mastermind group with 3 other veterans. It's called Purpose Driven Entrepreneur. And right now we have super low entry rate as far as cost. But as our thing grows, we're going to, increase that. So if anybody's interested, it's called, the website is pdemastermind.com, Purpose Driven Entrepreneur. That's where PDE comes from. So pdemastermind.com. But yeah, you can reach me on social media. And if you have questions or you're interested in any of those things, yeah, I'd love it. And I appreciate you guys having me on. I hope that the information that I shared, helps some of your listeners now. And I also equally hoping that it just inspires more people to really consider real estate as a long-term wealth strategy. Because back to our opening story, man, if I had known when I was younger what I know now, I'd already be a millionaire. But unfortunately, I started a day late and $1 short, but we're still working on it.
Yeah, I think it worked out for you. And I know, you obviously want to start earlier, but everything happens for a reason. And I think this is a good thing. And we never would have met 6 years ago in real estate school. So
true story. True story.
All right.
Well, thanks.
And
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah. Thank you. And if you want to reach out to Vanessa, I'll throw her number real quick too. And Jimmy, you mentioned you had a podcast. What's the name of your podcast?
Oh yeah. I got so many irons in the fire. That's why my mantra for 2025 is declutter, because I'm trying to focus on and not be so, but my podcast is Motion Matters on YouTube. And it's really just talking about the similar stuff, but really focus on the entrepreneurial journey and talking about the true trials and tribulations of what entrepreneurship really means. Because a lot of people like to take the pictures sitting in front of the Lambos or talk about, the yachts and all that stuff, but they don't. I like to sit there and talk about how difficult the journey was to actually get to that point, because that's the part I think that hopefully will inspire other people. So yeah, Motion Matters on YouTube.
Okay, it's on YouTube. Okay, so is it a podcast too, or just YouTube?
No, it is a podcast. Although I paused it and then I restarted it, so I actually got a notification I have to redo the links. So it will be on all the platforms like Apple's, Spotify, and it still is, but just the updated episodes. I got to fix those, but it's on all the platforms.
Cool. All right. Well, I appreciate it then, Jamie. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yep. And if you guys got any questions, of course, reach out to Vanessa, Jamie, or me, and we'll be happy to help you guys. See you guys in the next one.